Small Business Development Center there. It's all government funded, so it's free to help businesses. We have free business consulting. So if you need help applying for government grants during this time, or for government loans, or just how to put your financial statements together, things like that, our counselors will help you set those up for free and give you free. It's going to be web-based consulting now, Zoom consulting, kind of like this. But if you need any help with your business, with anything, with marketing, finances, anything else, we have free consultants there that can help you out. And we'll be adding some other things in the future as well. But
okay,
for right now, that's the best info we got. So
great. Thanks, Peter. Brandon, we've got you back on.
All right. Sorry about that. Is that a bit clear? Hopefully.
Yeah, that is definitely
much better.
Okay. I apologize for the technical difficulty, and it's good to be with you. Sorry about that.
All right. Well, I think we've got a bunch of people online, and they're ready to just hear from you. So go ahead. Take
Great.
it.
All yours.
Well, yeah, and I don't know. Hopefully this format allows for some questions and answers.
Yep, absolutely.
I'm happy to address as well. But, first and foremost, thank you everyone for joining. I know we're all kind of adapting to this shift that we've had to make in order to deal with the challenges of our time. The good news is we're working with businesses in the community and really the office market, which I really help advise overall. We've been really pleased with the ability of our Wasatch Front area business community to really adapt to the remote working format. And we're seeing that succeed on a day-to-day basis where if you take our company, for example, Colliers International has 5 offices that are located from St. George to Davis-Weber County. And in every case, we've been able to transition the majority of our 250 people into a remote working type of format successfully and have remained fully operational. And I think that really shows, I think, the triumph of bringing technology to the table in order to keep business moving unabated. We, of course, live in difficult times, and we're all trying to calibrate to what we need to be doing in the days and weeks ahead in order to push through this, yet still be able to maintain the momentum that is so critical to our business community and to really the economy. Speaking of the economy, a lot of interesting things happening on an hour-to-hour basis. I think with the advent of testing coming into play and a lot of testing capabilities that will be rolled out in the hours and days to come, you'll see new confidence brought to the market and the ability to hopefully isolate and treat those that are most at risk or afflicted by what is happening. But it's a volatile situation. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. This is a black swan event, if there ever was one. But our grandparents lived through 2 world wars, a Great Depression, and somehow survived disco. And I'm sure we can all survive this and be able to push ahead as we get creative in order to meet the needs of our community. It's funny. A lot of what we're experiencing right now reminds me of my favorite movie, which is It's a Wonderful Life. I don't know if everyone on this teleconference has seen that movie, but I watch it every year and have watched it every year since I was 18 years old. And without fail, if I watch it without any major interruption, by the end, I'm in tears every time. And there's only one other movie that has that kind of impact on me, and that's The Karate Kid, which is the second favorite movie of all time in my book. But in It's a Wonderful Life, you probably all remember the scene where there was a run on the bank, where there was a time of great economic crisis, and the Bailey Building and Loan was under siege, and George Bailey, who was going off to his honeymoon with his bride Mary, was really faced with the task of trying to hold everything together and really adapting to the time. And it was an interesting time. I think we're seeing, in some respects, not a run on the bank, if you will, but we're seeing anxiety and panic, and to a degree, I think, great concern. And a lot of that same emotion that you were seeing in that movie is really played out over the course of the last few weeks, and will in the days to come. And I think one thing that I took from It's a Wonderful Life, and that pivotal scene when the community was in crisis, was the fact that George Bailey was a stabilizing factor, and he pointed out to everyone that our fates are intertwined. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but he pointed out masterfully that if they all worked together, that they could get through the crisis. And of course, they had Old Man Potter bearing down on the building and loan and some of those other factors that made it all the more interesting. But I think right now, those same lessons can be taken and applied to our time, in that all of our fates are intertwined, and I think we all need to support each other in the community. I'm very, very inspired by the efforts of those to support our restaurant and service businesses that have been impacted by this. Hospitality, of course, is severely impacted by what we're experiencing. And it's important that as things bounce back, that we are sensitive to that, and hopefully as confidence is restored in the future, that we can help those businesses in our communities and help them by giving them a leg up and thinking proactively for the future. A lot of programs have been emerging, and I could get into the weeds and get granular with all of the SBA programs and whatnot that everyone is getting current on an hour-to-hour basis. I mean, there's a lot of relief for small businesses with loans that have forgiveness associated with them and their provisions. I encourage everyone to look into those programs. If you have any question, you can, of course, email me or any of my team, and we'd be happy to forward some of those resources to you. But, I have to give a lot of credit to the banking community right now. Across the board, I think the lending community has been mobilizing in a really tangible way to help business owners make it through this period. And, in cases where people of course have been most impacted, there are already deferment programs in place to be able to really navigate these troubled waters. And I think taking advantage of it and looking at it as a deferment is an appropriate way, as opposed to a flat out abatement. I mean, I think there is what we call holiday period that is being adjusted for relative to these times and the challenges that we're experiencing, that businesses can really, I think, take advantage of and count on in order to help them meet their obligations and to keep really open for business and mobilize in the right way for the future to bounce back. Any questions for those on this call? I'd like to open it up for a quick Q&A if possible.
So we do have Kelly made a comment. He said, when you were talking about the run on the banks, he's like, it's kind of like the run on toilet paper now. So
yeah, exactly.
But Stacy Carroll, she's a council member here in American Fork. She said, have you started seeing investors pulling out of projects?
Projects that are underway, that were underway prior to this crisis, are still continuing unabated. In fact, the construction continues, and you can see that evidenced as you drive around the community, and you can see those workers actually still showing up in those developments underway. You look here in American Fork on I-15, Woodbury's project, Utah Valley Tower, right on I-15 out in front of Domo, within the opportunity zone, is well under construction, and the steel is now up to the 4th floor of that building. You see others under construction in Pleasant Grove, just down the street within a few blocks. And I think you'll see the projects that were already underway come to fruition. Now, projects on the drawing board, that have either yet to be funded or we're preparing to break ground. I think, right now you can anticipate that there will be some pause, of course, with those projects and a delay for good reason. I was on the phone this morning with a very prominent developer in our state that has several buildings that they were preparing to go vertical on that will most likely place a hold on those projects in the next few weeks and probably adjust their calendars accordingly. But they also have buildings that are actually under construction that they'll complete, many of which will be completed by the end of this calendar year and brought online for certificate of occupancy. So the quick answer is anything under construction underway is going to be completed from what we're seeing so far. And that which was really on the drawing boards or in the process of being permitted will most likely move into a holding pattern or a pause as we recalibrate to kind of adjust to the timing and bringing everything else online in the future.
We have a question from Peter. Did you have something to add to that, Josh?
Well, just wanted to follow up on that. Is there any discussion amongst economists about how long of an impact this is going to have?
It changes every hour. I think the V-shaped curve that we've all kind of been anticipating as far as hopefully a quick recovery or bounce back, following aggressive testing and some stabilization, has yet to truly be, I think, realized or drawn out in a reliable fashion. That's a fancy way of me saying nobody is really certain right now at this point, how quickly things can be restored. But I think, over the course of the next few weeks, we'll see some clarity. It's not a matter of if, but when, and it's a function of this being kind of a moving target, but only for this interim period where we're trying to, I think, properly address testing and be able to anticipate, the curve associated with recovery and really the spread. How afflicted are we? In talking to healthcare professionals, Utah, won't see the peak of this for a number of weeks, and so we all have to be very patient, and also at the same time continue to keep up the momentum associated with our business activities while we fully determine the extent of the crisis and really what kind of realistic time frame we're working on. So I think it's realistic to say that it's not a matter of days or weeks, but it's probably a matter of months that we're dealing with in order to recover and stabilize from something of this magnitude. Hopefully, if anyone disagrees with me or thinks that I'm sowing disinformation, please jump in and correct me. But that's what I'm seeing as of this morning.
So thus far, I think you're seeing holds and pauses being put on projects. So far, nobody's canceled anything. There hasn't been anything that was going to be starting, and now people are saying, no, that's not going to happen at all.
Correct. And the encouraging thing that we're observing are the projects that are actually under construction are continuing and forging toward completion and have not adjusted their delivery dates as of yet. That's encouraging. It's no surprise that our most afflicted sectors of the economy are retail, hospitality, and residential, especially multifamily. The industrial market, on the other hand, is actually still moving forward unabated. In fact, in some pockets, we're seeing more industrial activity, which is remarkable. Office, in general, is in a state of paralysis, at least over the course of the last 10 days. It's in a bit of a holding pattern, but we are still seeing deals executed. Over the course of the next week, we see a number of companies that will actually be signing contracts that were really under negotiation and being finalized as we entered this crisis. So that's kind of the overall broad brush look at the market. I will say that retail has yet, and it will be some time before they'll be able to truly, I think, calculate what impact this has. But hospitality, in particular, has really been impacted, is no surprise. The lenders, though, that I'm speaking to overall, and I know there may be a number of lenders on this teleconference, are remarkably cooperative and are already granting deferment and some flexibility to those in order to meet debt service obligations, which I think will relieve some of the at least short-term stress as people are managing through this process and trying to avoid default. I think that's the overall mantra that we're seeing within the real estate community, is to avoid default. We're pleading with people to not overreact to the situation, to take a more measured response, and to take advantage of the programs that are really being advanced in the community by the government and by lenders in order to help us manage through this crisis.
So I think that moves to Peter's question. So some of these landlords are getting deferments. Are any of them passing them on to their tenants to help them? Like, how is that being navigated?
Yes. We're in talks with a number of landlords, both locally and nationally, that are passing, at least a percentage of that on to the tenants. There are two components to rent. Typically, there's the base rent, which is typically separate from operating expense. Your utilities, taxes, insurance, janitorial, and other expenses, may be a little bit more difficult to defer than rent, than your debt service and some of your more fixed obligations that fall under the base rent component. And so I see not a total deferment, but at least a healthy partial deferment being passed through to tenants. And in some cases, some landlords are providing overall relief that will be, I think, passed through. But I will say that landlords are grappling with this situation just as much as tenants right now, and trying to meet their obligations and their debt service, and in being able to meet the contract agreements that they have in place in order to continue to deliver service. Even though a lot of people have been able to successfully shift to remote working, the fact is all of the buildings and centers across the market are still open. The lights are on, the mechanical systems are still operating, and there's still some skeleton crews working and keeping companies fully operational and functional. And so, it's important for everyone to note that, costs are being incurred on an hourly basis, regardless of whatever, shift in remote working or shelter at home, strategies are being employed.
Have you seen the impact be greater in one area over another? Is Salt Lake County being affected more, Utah County, Northern Utah?
It's tough to say. Of course, up in the Park City area was most impacted and actually took the most aggressive action initially. But the Wasatch Front, Davis County, of course, instituted their shelter at home policy. They have not quite here in Utah County implemented, I think, the same aggressive measures. I think they're hoping that people will actually govern themselves accordingly and use best practices in supporting a remote working strategy. But we're seeing what over the course of the last week, what I would call a very measured response to the crisis, where instead of mandating or taking more serious action relative to enforcement, we see the governor's office putting out a very strict advisory and really trusting that business leaders and that community leaders are going to properly implement that and follow through in order to flatten the curve and to help really, minimize the amount of spread throughout the market.
Well, I think that shows in the numbers out there. I was doing a comparison. Domo has that tracking system out there, and I'm seeing that Utah has a very low rate of death to people that test positive compared to a lot of the other states. And then talking about the manufacturing side of things, we've got several companies that have switched entirely from their normal business to creating supplies for, the health industry, mainly doing masks and ventilators. Is that one reason why you're seeing the manufacturing or industrial not taking as big of a hit, is because they're able to switch like that?
To a degree, and they're able to, people are they're not working in modular, in dense office environments. With manufacturing and industrial, you see people, you see the ability to social distance in the workplace a lot more effectively. You see that also evidenced in the construction industry, especially when you look at those projects outdoors versus indoors that are under construction. The ability to actually, utilize masks and to take, I think, measures that will actually, distance employees from each other. It's a lot more successfully implemented within industrial applications as opposed to office or retail. And I think as it relates to manufacturing, we'll see in the days ahead how people continue to adapt to it in order to keep operations humming and keep the momentum going.
And do you see, Utah has kind of been a little insulated on the economic side of things. I feel like they've had a better track record over the past several years. Do you feel like we are better in place, or are we prepared better to recover from this other than the rest of the nation?
Well, good question. In any crisis, in any recession or crisis, Utah has been a bit insulated from both the East and West Coast markets, from the primary markets, and has usually bounced back quicker as well. We've never really participated in the wild upswings and the appreciated values that other markets have seen, but we've always been more of a safe haven. I think our positioning right now is much the same. We haven't seen the same degree of distress or concern exhibited here yet that you see in the coastal markets or in major primary markets. And I would hope that Utah's conservatism and our ability to be a stable operational environment for people because of our level of preparedness and a lot of the foundational approach that goes back decades ago will end up helping us be a model for the rest of the country. I think it's important to note that our governor actually advanced the first organized plan in the United States, from a governor's office standpoint, as far as a full community scale implementation of measures. And, that's just one very prominent example of how Utah leads. Utah is leading as far as, taking, I think, a more proactive approach to I think, realistically address the crisis, and also band together as a community in order to help prop up, industries like the restaurant industry that have been most afflicted by this from an economic standpoint.
Okay, we have a question from David Bunker, who's our city administrator. I know you've been involved in some of our discussions about the fiber project that we're trying to get going in American Fork. So he asks, has this increased how critical access to broadband technology fiber is or will be for projects on the books or upcoming projects from a marketing standpoint?
Absolutely. Connectivity will trump sustainability for the foreseeable future as a result of this renewed emphasis on really technology and using technology platforms in order to not only create more efficiencies, but also to enable, interactions like this today. I think this really underscores the world that we live in, and the dependency on fiber optic connectivity, and also access to multiple provider connectivity across the board. I mean, companies already are prioritizing redundancy and greater bandwidth, and also more cost-effective bandwidth in order to deliver, I think, a better solution, not only for their customers, but for their employees. And I think that that infrastructure is going to pay huge dividends for decades to come.
So we know that you're pressed for time, but just wondering, do you have anything else to share? You are on the task force, is that correct? The governor's task force? You bet. I've been humbled to be on the governor's economic task force as we've addressed this since inception. Had the privilege of participating in the process associated with the Utah Leads initiative and the plan that was actually put forward. And I'm very proud of our state's proactive efforts. We have a lot of things to be proud of from a leadership standpoint, and I have to applaud everyone's effort collectively within the community, between state, municipal leaders, all the way down to your small business owners that have been able to adapt to the current climate that we're in. I think it's important, again, for all of us to remember those lessons from It's a Wonderful Life. There's no need to make a run on the bank, figuratively, and to panic. I think we need to be sensitive to the needs of our neighbors through this, and know that some industries have been more impacted by others, and being sensitive to that, and also chipping in where we can in order to help bolster those industries and those neighbors is going to be important. That is how we're going to get through this successfully, and how Utah is truly going to be able to lead and to be the model for the rest of the country is really our sense of community and the ability to execute as a community, and in many cases be able to place our self-interest aside as needed in order to help strengthen those that are most impacted. So I really applaud a lot of the heroic and the generous efforts that we've seen already evidenced community-wide. And again, this really goes to the heart of our strength as really a leader in public-private partnerships. The rest of the country is really grappling with how to work together between state, municipal, and local leadership and the business community. And that's just something that we do here in Utah and are already, I think, executing on to the degree possible right now with the information that we've been given. But I think it's important that we all support each other and really help our neighbors also understand the programs that are available financially in order to navigate this difficult time. Well, we really appreciate it. I've got one more question for you, if you don't mind. No. You have several people from the hotel industry on the call right now. And so either as a task force or as your team at Colliers, have you had any discussions or any thoughts on how to help the hotel industry recover quicker, in a I think fashion? There are no easy answers right now, other than I think we need to all prepare as a business community to make commitments to our hospitality leaders and to our hospitality community as this situation improves. We need to not only book our meetings and our conferences proactively, but to also encourage using those facilities and those resources in our community and really champion the infrastructure and the amenities that we have. It's funny, one of the things that we've championed for a long time within the office community is the proximity of our business centers to hospitality, to hotel and convention and meeting space, which is so critical to I think,
really recruitment, retention, and a lot of the companies that have a global footprint or at least a national footprint. And I think championing programs in the future that will help drive activity and interest to those industries and to the amenity base that we have here is going to be critical. It's funny, those amenities and resources that we tout as key strengths in our office sector, which are access, which involve access to restaurants, retail service amenities, and hospitality, are the most impacted right now, and we need to be sensitive to that and champion those amenities as we climb out of this.
Well, I don't think we've got any other questions that have come through, so we really do appreciate your time. It's just a crazy time that we're living in, and it's hard to say exactly how we're going to navigate, but as is been the case in the past, and as we will move forward in the future, we will get through it. And I think that especially here in Utah, we will lead out on how to handle recovery. And I think that's being for our business community and for our citizens, our residents, our cities, is that we put these plans in place of a recovery plan. Right now, everyone's talking about, well, how do we just survive? But we also need to put in place, what are the steps we're going to take to get back to where we were? Right.
Well, I'm very encouraged by the positive efforts seen to mobilize and to actually make adjustments. The way our business community has reacted and adjusted in very short order is inspiring. And I think in the same way that we've all had to pivot over the course of the last several weeks in order to really properly address this, we'll be able to pivot back into position and mobilize in order to strengthen our communities for the future. So thank you, everyone. And feel free to email me with any questions, concerns, and we'll look forward to fighting through this together.
Yeah, would you mind giving out your email for everybody?
You bet. My email is Brandon, Brandon, .Fugal, Fugal, at Colliers, COLLIERS.com. Any information you need relative to programs, the economy, or what we're implementing as a community, we'd be happy to address. Thank you so much, Josh and team.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brandon. We've just got a couple announcements we're going to do here at the end, but you're welcome to hop off at any time.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. So just so everyone's aware, our next call, we're going to be doing these calls every Monday and Thursday. Our next call is Monday at noon, and we have Camille Pendleton, who runs the Small Business Development Center, SBDC, here in Utah County, and Peter J., the president of the Business Resource Center. They will be addressing everyone. They have a lot of resources and team members and mentors to help businesses understand how to navigate through all of these, how to navigate through the SBA loans, how to market yourself better during this time. So we're excited to have them. And then on Thursday, Christina, who do we have for Thursday?
Austin.
So Austin Duke will be speaking, and he'll be talking about managing.
Talk about some of the programs that they have.
Yeah, so he's with Edward Jones, and he'll be talking about how the coronavirus has kind of affected the investment industry and how to be smart with your money during this time. Do you have anything else you'd like to add, Christina?
Nope, I think we're good.
All right. Well, thanks again for joining us today on this call. We appreciate Brandon Fugal and the information he brought to us, and we appreciate everyone and all that you're doing to try to keep the community and the business community moving forward. We do recommend, if you want information, tomorrow, I believe, is when you can start actually getting the application submitted for a PPP loan. That's the payroll SBA loan that is out. That is the loan that you can actually have forgiven or turned into a grant. And so please, if you have any questions, reach out to either Christina or myself or anyone on the team over at the SBDC, because that is a very, very good loan. Al Diller just put in that they're actually able to answer questions as well. So he is an investment firm, and so anyone that is an expert in that, we encourage you to reach out and get moving on that. We also have the Utah loans that are available for businesses with under 50 employees. All of these videos are available on our YouTube channel. Just look up American Fork Chamber on YouTube, and we have a lot of those questions that are answered in those videos. And then also on our website, all the resources are available, links to just about anything that you can think of that can help your business. All right. Well, thanks again, everyone, and we hope you have a great day. Christina, you want to kick us out again?
All right. Thank you, everybody. And hopefully we'll see you on Monday. Stay safe and stay healthy.
Okay. Thanks again.